Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This happened to me back around 1992. A little background: at the time I was or am 6'2" and some 300 pounds. One of my hobbies was lifting weights, so I am very solidly built. At this time I was working at a university in Washington, D.C. as a campus machine shop manager. It was a lovely spring day in early May and I had packed my lunch that day. I decided to have lunch on a quad, but what I did not know was that a vegan rally was going on that day. I laid out my lunch and opened the book I had been reading and took a healthy bite of the sandwich. For anyone that was, I had myself a classic Dagwood with several different types of meat and cheese on a 12-inch sub-roll. As I was going to take a second bite of my sandwich, I noticed three men in their 20s were looking at me and whispering to each other. Then a guy that I could assume was only 20 and seemed to be the leader took a step towards me and asked what kind of sandwich I was having. As I was describing the contents of the sandwich, all three men started getting visibly agitated. Then all three started yelling about how meat was murder and a load of other nonsense. When I had a chance, I asked him a simple question: where did the word vegetarian come from? All three gave me confused looks, so I continued. Vegetarian was an old American Indian word for poor hunter. I then went back to my book and lunch. All three did not take my attitude very well. The leader, least of all. With a grunt, he ripped the book out of my left hand. Then he smacked the sandwich out of my right hand. With a smile on his face, he then stomped on my sandwich. The leader of the three then started waving his finger in my face and asked me what I thought of that. So I grabbed his arm at the wrist, stretched it out, and with one sharp blow, I destroyed his right elbow. He dropped to the ground screaming. The second man in the group decided to run at me with a fist raised. I blocked his blow and landed a slashing punch to the center of his chest. He dropped like a poleaxed steer. By the time I had turned to face, the third man, campus police had arrived. All four of us were detained and DC police were called along with an ambulance. I spent that night in jail. A few weeks later I went to court and I told the judge my side of the story in short, concise sentences. The others thought that this was the perfect time to regale the court with a long tirade of vegan nonsense. The judge allowed them to speak for a while until the judge had enough. All charges were dropped against me. The three idiots had to pay all the fines and fees. Quick backstory. I was born in the UK, but my family moved to the French-speaking part of Switzerland for my dad's job. Since I was 4, I've attended local schools. I picked up French just by being around people who spoke it. At the time of this story, I was around 14 and I speak French so fluently as a local that it surprises people when I switch between fluent English and French so easily. I was the only person in my school aside from the English teacher who spoke fluent English, so more often than not, I was paired with kids that joined the school if their native language was English to help them get along and understand stuff. Although this was my first experience being paired up with someone. The current story. So one morning when I got to school a few minutes into the first period, the dean called me into her office through the intercom. My first reaction was, oh no, what have I done? Since whoever got called to her office was pretty much always in deep trouble. I get up and leave the class with everyone staring at me, clearly wondering what had happened because I was never in trouble. I head down to her office, knock on the door and hesitantly enter because my anxiety is making me think that I've screwed up real bad, even if I wasn't aware of having done anything. The dean was sitting at her desk while the entitled son and mother, who looked like they were from the Middle East, were sitting on the other side of the desk. The language teacher was sitting next to the dean as well. The entitled kid wasn't really entitled at the start. He was actually quite friendly, so I will speed through the first part when he is bearable. The dean introduced me to him, explaining he just arrived at the school and only spoke English. I was paired up with him to help him around the school and with communication. He shared all of my classes, so he stayed with me. Once the entitled mother was assured that I was decent enough for her son, she let us go and she left. The first few weeks went perfectly fine. He didn't need to do the test I was doing because he knew too little, and I was teaching him French as he needed it. And he pretty much knew enough basics to get along in basic communication. The nonsense started to happen when I started to show up less to school. I pimpolied the last school year, and it was around the beginning of May that my attendance was getting a bit shoddy. This was mainly because my mental health was getting worse and I was so suicidal that I didn't want to leave the house in fear of doing something stupid. I've been off for 3 days because I spent 2 nights in the mental health unit at the hospital. I come back and the entitled kid comes and finds me. At that point in time, I was very tired, depressed, and anxious. "Hey, where were you the last 3 days? I barely understood anything, and I got detention for not doing homework I couldn't understand." "Did you even attempt it?" "No, I didn't understand anything." I just sighed, knowing that he was lying because he knew enough to try and attempt his homework. He showed me the sheet, and that confirmed what I thought. He could have tried. I apologized and just got on with my day. Catching up was my work and helping him. I didn't want to explain what I was going through. On top of my mental health issues that were developing, I was in a very toxic relationship, which did not help. A few days later, I was off again, but only for 1 day, and I was leaving school a lot because I had almost daily appointments at that unit. And obviously, the entitled kid wasn't too pleased about this, and he brought in his mom. The entitled mother was waiting for me when I got back. The kid came up to me when I was back. From the first time I was off, I instantly regretted having accepted to be paired with him. She didn't come near me, but she was giving me death glares as I spoke to him. "I have a test in a few days and I don't understand the revision stuff at all. I need you to teach me to speak French." "I've been teaching you what you need. You should be fine." "I don't think you heard me. I want you to teach me French so I can be as fluent as you." "Look man, there is no way I can teach you to be as fluent as me in the space of a few days. That's impossible." "You will teach me French or my mother will get you removed from the school." I was about to walk away until his mom grabbed me by the arm and turned me around to face her. "Ma'am, please don't touch me. I barely know you." "You will teach my son French, or I will take matters to the headmaster." She spoke somewhat quietly to me so as not to get much attention. Again, I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, but there is no way I can do that. I am helping him as much as I can when I'm at school. I can't do more. I am busy outside of school. My baby keeps telling me that you are leaving school early. Why?" "Well, that's none of your business." She raised her voice. "It is my business because you aren't helping my beautiful boy." I yanked my arm free and walked into the building because she had no right to be in school. Speed forward to the middle of May when I was signed off school for the rest of the year by the unit because I couldn't leave the house. It was around that time that I was spending most of my time at the unit. When I spent a week as a temporary inpatient, how it worked was that you had those who were hospitalized, and there were 2 extra rooms for those who needed a night there but weren't hospitalized. So I was coming back each evening and I wasn't even bothering to pack up my stuff with me. I just left it there because I kept coming back. The entitled kid only had my Instagram because I wasn't giving this guy my number. He'd been messaging me, demanding I teach him and asking where I was. I was getting sick of this nonsense, so I told him everything that was going on. He demanded I give him my number so I could actually talk to him. I convinced him to give me his number so I could call him, which he did, and before I called, I installed an app so my number came up as private, so he didn't have it. And for my sake of proof, it was a screen recording, so I had the call in case I needed it. I called him from the room I was staying in the unit temporarily. And this is how it goes. "Which? Why are you lying to me?" I had headphones on with low volume and this still scared me. "Lying about what?" "You know what you're lying about." "You are going to need to clear that up. I don't know what you're talking about." "About your mental health. You're lying and saying you have a mental illness so you don't need to teach me French and so you can avoid me. You're a girl and I'm a boy, so you should respect me as your superior." At this point, an idea popped into my head. I wasn't able to be hospitalized yet because there was no room. But that day, I was staying during the day because a room was opening up. This was a Friday, and on Saturday, the culture group happened in the morning, where we went to the museum. I tell him, if you want to see me face to face, come meet me at the museum tomorrow at 10-ish, because I'll be there. You will regret saying that. I hung up. I wouldn't. I would be wandering around with my new buddy Jay, whom I'd instantly gotten along with the moment I arrived. We've been inseparable and we acted like we'd known each other for ages. We were in groups of 2 with a nurse. We were only 4 patients since one left Saturday morning, and a nurse would be with each group to keep an eye on us. I bet we would do anything, but they had to be sure. Also, the nurses were super friendly and acted like they wanted to be there and help you, unlike the other mental health units across the city. We stayed on the top 2 floors of an apartment, so it had a homely feel. Not like you were locked in a hospital, it was pretty much like shared living. So I handed my phone over, patients have a no phone rule for the first 48 hours, and moved upstairs. Saturday came around and after breakfast we headed to the museum. I was with J and C, who was my favorite out of all the nurses who rotated shifts. And of course, the entitled kid and his mother were at the museum. They found me fairly quickly. A little time after J and C and I started exploring and sharing opinions on the exhibits. "Mommy, that little witch that was rude to me is over there." He points to me, and the entitled mother comes over to me. "You little witch, lying about mental health to my precious child to make him fail his test, and you were taking up space in the hospital for those who need it." The entitled kid had obviously told her or shown her what I had said on Instagram about my situation. Now, before you make fun of me for starting to cry, I'll remind you that I was depressed and anxious as hell, along with a few other mental issues. So I got upset easily, and I had only agreed to this because I was sick of the harassment. The yelling and my starting to cry got C's attention. She comes over while Jay pulls me into a hug as we listen to what happened. "Excuse me, madam. Why are you yelling at her? Can't you see you're making her unhappy?" C had asked in English, since she spoke it quite well. "This little liar refused to teach my son French and has taken up room at your psycho unit because she's lying about mental health." First off, just because these adolescents suffer mental health problems doesn't mean they are psychos. Secondly, do not insult her. And thirdly, what makes you think she's lying about mental health? I've got access to her case note from the past 2 months that can prove otherwise. The entitled mother wasn't having any of this. She storms over to me and forces me away from Jay, grabbing me harshly by the arms, which was really painful because of recent self-harm despite the thickness of the hoodie I was wearing. This witch knew it hurt, and he pulled up my sleeves and looked at my arms with a look of disgust. C and a few other people around were getting security, which was common as the entitled mother was actively running her nails over my scabs and making me bleed again. Security yanked her off me and asked her why she did that. She was yelling at them. A nice security lady brought me, C, and J to where the emergency medical kit was kept and bandaged me up. Because of all of this, she was taken into jail for questioning. I was allowed my phone on an exception when we got back because a policeman came with us so I could make them listen to the call and show them the messages the entitled kid had sent me. After all this, the entitled kid was suspended from the school because of the harassment, and the mother was sentenced to 6 months of community service. I also managed to get a restraining order against her and her son. I just want to add this: I have no issue in any shape or form with people from the Middle East at all. It is just these 2 people that are practically entitled. I wanted to add that in case my stance on the story wasn't clear. Back when I was in college, a buddy of mine and I used to go to Buffalo chicken wings night every Monday at the local joint. In NY, the wings were legit, except for suicide level hot. It was never really that spicy, just a bunch of Tabasco. One day, we were really jonesing for hot. We had physically seen the cook in prior visits, a big burly don't screw with me type of person. I told the waiter to write down our directions for the cook. We said table 8 says you can't make these wings spicy enough for them because you like small boys and are not enough of a man to make them hot. He first refused to write that down. We slipped him $10, big money back then, and said just blame us. A pitcher of crab beer and a dozen wings for each came out. A pitcher of crab beer and a dozen wings for each came out. They smelled spicy, so we were stoked. Had one bit of one wing, and we immediately chucked our 16-ounce beer because, oh my god, how did he make them this spicy on a whim? We each ate the remainder of the very first wing, and that pitcher of beer was annihilated. We hadn't noticed, but the cook was sticking his head out the door, watching us. At this point, he's crying from laughing so hard. He comes over and says he'll make us a fresh order. Those were the ones sitting at the very bottom of the prep bucket for hours. They have been soaking in the chili peppers and so on. They never served them as a rule. We told him that wasn't right. We demanded hyper spicy, and he delivered. And it was our responsibility to finish them with a smile. We immediately called 2 friends and told them in 2 hours we'd need to be picked up because we'd be hammered. And they had to come drive us in my car home. They were baffled. And it was a Monday night, but agreed. It took 2 full hours and 3 pitchers of beer each, but we finished them. We stayed as quiet as we could, given how much pain we were in. Thankfully, the restaurant was always 50% full. The cook came out to give us a high five and asked, "I'm betting you won't ask for ultra spicy again, right?" "No, sir, we will not. You have beaten us and we acknowledge your superiority." We left a master tip and our sober friends drove us home. They made both of us sit in the back seat of my car, and as they didn't want to risk anyone throwing up in their car or on one of them as a driver. The epilogue: 12 far hotter than suicide buffalo wings didn't just burn on the way down. Thankfully, we lived with only college students who heard, "Oh my god, please kill me now," from the bathroom for 48 hours after that. Best wings ever.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.